talk about Central Washington University now, and this is something that has kind of developed in the last, say, 10 days. Some very interesting things. The Wildcats played Montana, I guess maybe a little longer than 10 days. No, it would be about 10 days. They played Montana a couple of Saturdays ago and just got absolutely waxed. I don't remember what the final score was, like 55-3 or something like that. And since then, they have actually had their starting quarterback. Now, Christian Moore is the young man. He's out of Bellarmine Prep High School. Christian Moore left and is in the transfer portal, and he is going somewhere else. Now, in 2019, Christian Moore led the Wildcats as the quarterback. He was the leading passer. And the reason he didn't play against Montana was he was coming off of a shoulder surgery, I believe it was. And just, there was, I don't know if there was a need or if he was cleared. I'm not sure exactly what it is. Michael Roots, on the other hand, a young man out of, I believe, Southern California, no, Northern California? I can't remember exactly.
Northern California, yep.
Yeah. And he was the leading running back in 2019. He also has hit the transfer portal. And then their leading receiver, Tyson Rainwater, out of Sumner High School, correct? Sumner?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Tyson Rainwater, he also has hit the transfer portal. Now, some very interesting things here because Roots, he did not play in the Montana game. And part of the reason he did not play is because he had basically been removed from the roster. And what it is he was practicing all the way up until. He was practicing all the way up until the game, and a couple of days before was removed. And this is very interesting. And it's I don't care what anybody says. I had people tweeting at me saying, "Oh, it's not that big of a deal. They'll be just fine." Blah blah. It is a big deal. I'm sorry. It's a big deal when you lose your starting quarterback, your starting running back, and your starting wide receiver. That is a big deal. You're number one guy at all three positions. I don't care who you are. That is a big deal. I don't know if it's a Central Washington thing. I don't know if it is look, they brought in, it was about a year ago, I think. They brought in a new offensive coordinator. They brought in Zach Tinker, who had been at South Dakota School of Mines, and he's a Western Washington guy. And so I don't know if it's a Zach Tinker thing. Look, the fact of the matter is you lose your three most productive players on offense. That's a big issue. I don't care who you are. That is a big issue. Now, I get news within the last couple of days that Central Washington has started releasing players from scholarships. So these are players that are on scholarship that are now being told, hey, we don't have a spot for you anymore. And part of it is they brought in, I think, 17 or 18 players in this year's recruiting class. Well, that's major mismanagement of scholarships at that point. And I don't care who you are, that is a little bit concerning. Because I get it, the NCAA allowed the seniors to come back. And this is where, you and I talked about it before, and this was going to become kind of an issue. Do you keep the seniors that want to come back? Do you start telling those guys, hey, sorry, we're not going to have a spot for you? I don't know what you do. I don't know what the answer is. And honestly, this is where I think, again, we've talked about it. I think the NCAA made a little bit of a mistake by allowing everybody to come back, the seniors, because I think you would have been smarter to just bite the bullet on the seniors and, I'll just say it this way, screw over one class instead of potentially screwing over the next 4 or 5 or 6, which it starts to look like it might actually do it. I know of freshmen that were, that had been at the school for essentially less than a year that have been released from their scholarship. That's an issue. That is a real issue. And I don't care what anybody says. That is something that is very concerning. So now, some of the other things that we have to think about here is, where do they go next in terms of their conference? So the GNAC is down to 3 schools as far as football is concerned. They've got Western Oregon, you've got Simon Fraser, and you've got Central Washington. So where do you go from here? Because you can't just play those 2 teams over and over and over again. So they've already got a home-and-home series with those 2 teams, and that's what they've done for a little while now. But where do you go from here? You can't really go to D3, because if you go to D3, well, they don't really fit I'll say it this way, they don't really fit the academic profile of the D3 schools in the Pacific Northwest. But if you go there, you go from having all these people on scholarship to no scholarships allowed. NAIA is where they were before they moved up to Division II. And you were at Azusa, I believe, when it was NAIA, correct?
Yep, correct.
Yeah, and so NAIA makes a lot of sense when you look at the overall fit. Now, that being said, if they move to NAIA for football, everything's coming with it. Well, the same thing happens if they move to Division 1. And this is where I've had people tell me, "Hey, Division 1 might be a real option for Central." And I'm sorry, but they are light years away from Division 1. I mean, they are a long way away from Division 1. When you start talking about the stadium, when you start talking about being able to make money in a stadium, which you have to be able to do, I mean, I'll just say this. Look at Eastern Washington right now. Eastern Washington is struggling financially, and they have been for a little while. And look, the fact of the matter is they don't really sell out their stadium. I mean, they do.
And they're in FCS power.
Yes. That is a school that is consistent. I mean, they're in the playoffs again. And they're consistently a legitimate national championship contender, and they can't even sell out their stadium on a regular basis. And maybe they do sell out the stadium, but you're not making it. Look, Montana, yeah, that's different. Those guys are selling out like a 28,000 or something like that seat stadium. It's huge. And the same with Montana State. Look at the investment Montana State is making right now in their athletic facilities. Central Washington's going to have to do the same thing. Well, where's that money coming from? It's not coming from the state. It's not coming. You're going to have to raise that money. And frankly, I don't think the passion for Central Washington football is there to the point that they can go raise millions of dollars. I mean, the fact of the matter is the stadium they have right now is perfectly fine, and it's not better than Pod Keeney. Pod Keeney's a better stadium than Tomlinson Stadium at Central Washington. It is. I'm sorry if that's a slap in the face to some people, but it is. It absolutely is. So when you start combining things with the uncertainty of where they're going from a conference and potentially having to play a lot of games, quite a ways away. I mean, down in Texas or, and shoot, some of those Texas schools are moving up to Division I now with the WAC, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you start thinking, could they go to the WAC? No, not for football they couldn't. The amount of travel they would have in the WAC would be unbelievable. So where do they go? The Big Sky? Well, okay. Maybe the Big Sky makes sense, but what do they got to do? They're going to have to spend a lot of money on that stadium. Look at Northern Colorado. They were a D2 powerhouse. They moved up to the Big Sky, and it has not worked. And it's not because they didn't invest money. They spent a lot of money on different things there. Fact of the matter is, making that jump from D2 to D1 is incredibly, incredibly tough. One of the other things people have to remember too is when you do stuff like that, not just the financial investment in the what's it called, in the stadium and things like that, but all of a sudden you have a lot more money you need to spend on scholarships, and it's not just football; it's other sports. You have to spend a lot more money on scholarships for basketball, all of them, right? And so, like the jump from D2 to D1. Is not just simple. It's not just something that's going to go, happen in a year. It's not just going to happen that easy. So they have some serious issues that they need to get figured out. And I don't know if it's on the coaching staff. I don't know if it is, on the athletic department as a whole. When I say coaching staff, obviously building a stadium is not on the coaching staff. But I'm talking about the recruiting side of things. And here's one thing, Brandon. What was it, like Thursday I put out a tweet about this, maybe Wednesday, saying that, hey, we're going to talk about this. And within about 2 hours, I received messages from multiple players on the Central Washington roster. Multiple players that I covered in high school that I haven't talked to in probably 3 or 4 years. And they're reaching out to me saying, Ryland, you don't even know it. It is awful here right now. And every single one of them was texting me bad things about the school. And I'm sorry, but when you have multiple players going out of their way to contact me, guys that I don't even consider to be, kids that I've really followed up with. I try to keep in contact with a lot of them, but most of them are guys that, they move on to college, and I don't really hear from them too much after high school. And these are guys reaching out to me just saying, it's awful here. It's awful here. I can't wait to get out. I'm sorry, that's an issue. That isn't just...
That's a red flag.
Yeah, it's a major red flag. And the problem becomes, as this stuff gets around, it's going to get into the high school coaches. And the high school coaches are going to start to hear things. When the high school coaches start to hear things, what happens? The athletes that they have on their team, they don't want to send their kid there. Why would they?
Right.
Why would they? If you were a high school coach and a school is releasing players from their scholarship, why would I want to send my athletes to that school? I wouldn't want to do it.
It's funny too because you talk about the stadium in Central Washington. I mean, when I was at Azusa Pacific, they had a stadium that had one set of stands. It seated maybe 3,000, 4,000 tops if you count everybody that could bring their lawn chair and sit in the end zone, which was kind of a tradition because APU had a great track program. So, of course, it was a great facility for track and field, but it wasn't a great football facility. So when they moved to Division Two, and really towards the end of their NAIA run, they moved right next door to a community college, Citrus College, which is a junior college in Glendora, and APU played their home games at a junior college field. So now imagine you're an NCAA Division two university. You've outgrown your own stadium, but you having to play your games at a JUCO stadium. That's the thing. Like there are like size requirements, stadium requirements for schools to play. If I remember right, wasn't there a time when Idaho was having to schedule their home games for Martin Stadium in Pullman to ensure that they met stadium capacity to stay FBS? And it's impossible almost unless you've got oil money in Texas, which a lot of schools seem to have,
Yeah.
to make that Division two to Division one jump. There was a time where a lot of schools made the NAIA to Division one jump, but most of those were non-football playing schools that had good basketball programs,
Yep.
and they made the move. You don't see a lot of programs that have football making that jump because, like you said, scheduling becomes an issue. I mean, look at the GNAC. Right now, you could say realistically only two programs in the GNAC can play because the border's still closed, so that's preventing Simon Fraser from coming across and playing. So 5 years ago, you had Humboldt State, Azusa Pacific, Simon Fraser, Western Oregon, Central Washington, and Dixie State. Now, Dixie State's FCS. Simon Fraser can't get across the border. APU and Humboldt have dropped football. So you're down to what? Central and Western Oregon. And that's why they're having to play in this league with the Colorado schools. Well, those schools are geared for, there's more Division two schools in that area. So scheduling is easier, recruiting is easier. And it's just, I'm not saying this is a white flag that Central's raising. I'm just saying that like people think that this is a GNAC issue. The GNAC issue has been going on for a few years. It might be just more of a college football issue given geography.
Yeah, well, and the fact of the matter is, when you look at the Division threes, I think you and I talked about it before, that like the NAIAs kind of have a like a hold on like Iowa, Kansas, Missouri area, right? And then the D3s, you go a little bit like north and east of there, and there's the Wisconsins and the Mount Unions or whatever. The Ohio's are very good as well, right? And that's where Division two, I start looking at things. I start wondering if Division two has a place in the Pacific Northwest anymore. I just don't know that it does. I mean, your other options as far as the GNAC is concerned is what? To try to get schools to move up? Well, who are you going to get to move up? Whitworth? They're not moving up.
Right.
I mean, I don't know what their other options are. You know what I mean? Their options, you start looking around, you just go, I don't know what it is. What are your options? Is it get College of Idaho to move up to D2 from NAIA? Is it Carroll College? They're not going anywhere. There's no way they're leaving the NAIA. And some of these schools that are in that Frontier Conference, why would they want to leave? And frankly, I think that they don't have the budget to leave, and so I don't know. I don't know what the solution is, but it starts getting pretty concerning when you start seeing some of these things that are going on. And the fact of the matter is, at the end of the day, as far as Division II is concerned in this state, Central Washington pretty much has a monopoly on recruiting. They can basically come in and take any kid that they want. And it's pretty tough for a Simon Fraser or a Western Oregon. Now, Western Oregon, they have a camp that they run where schools come down and visit, and schools come down there. And so, yeah, if you're part of one of those schools, I could see you wanting to go to Western Oregon because you've spent time on the campus. You love it there. But it's a little different once you're there full time, right? But as far as Central's concerned, I don't know who else that they really recruit against, because like they might offer some of the same guys as Eastern Washington, but they're not recruiting against Eastern. Come on. You're not. And so it used to be Western Washington was the school that they had to recruit against. Well, now Western Washington, that same area, has basically become Simon Fraser, and it's no offense to Simon Fraser, but they're not recruiting the same kids. Yeah. I mean, they're recruiting them, but they're not winning battles. Simon Fraser isn't winning battles against Central Washington, and it's no offense to Simon Fraser, but their academics are very good up there. Their business schools is tremendous, but as far as football goes, Central Washington's won a lot of games, and they've got a major stranglehold. And I don't know. It's interesting. It's going to be really interesting to follow it because I don't know where they go from here. I don't know where it is, but they have to come up with a solution because the GNAC you just can't survive. It's just not going to survive for football. They're going to have to come up with another solution there.